You are wearing something right now. You put it on without thinking, without questioning it, without once asking why a hairless ape living in temperature-controlled rooms with access to climate systems and insulated walls still wraps itself in layers every single morning. You just do it. But the real answer to why is far stranger than keeping warm. Clothing is one of the most defining things about being human. And almost everything you believe about why it started is wrong. The obvious answer is warmth. Survival? Early humans moved into cold climates, naked skin wasn't enough, so they grabbed animal hides and wrapped themselves. Clean, simple, logical, except that it doesn't hold up. Here's the problem. Humans were losing body hair long before they were living anywhere cold. Paleoanthropologist Nina Jablonski at Penn State University has spent decades tracing the timeline of human hair loss. Her research suggests humans began losing dense body hair somewhere between 1.5 and 2 million years ago. That's Homo erectus territory. Long before anyone was trudging through European winters, long before anyone needed a coat. So if the cold didn't strip you of your hair, what did? The leading answer is heat. Not cold, heat. Your ancestors were running, not jogging, hunting, pursuing prey across open savanna for hours at a time, a strategy called persistence hunting that some groups still practice today. And running generates enormous amounts of internal heat. Body hair traps that heat. So evolution did something remarkable. It stripped most of the fur away. Gave your ancestors more sweat glands per square centimeter of skin than almost any other mammal on Earth. Let the heat escape. Kept the brain from cooking itself during a 4-hour chase. So for hundreds of thousands of years, your ancestors were essentially naked and thriving. Warm climates, sun overhead, bare skin, no problem. Then something shifted. Around 170,000 years ago, the Earth entered a brutal cold period. Ice sheets expanded. Temperatures dropped. Homo sapiens, already anatomically modern, were suddenly facing environments that bare skin was never designed for. This is where clothing enters the story. Not as an invention, exactly. More like a discovery. You pick up a hide. You hold it around your body. The wind stops biting. Your fingers stop going numb. This works. But here is where the science gets genuinely strange. You cannot carbon date a piece of leather. Organic material that old doesn't survive. So for most of the 20th century, researchers assumed clothing was maybe 40,000 years old, maybe 100,000 at most, based on bone needles and scrapers found at archaeological sites. Then a biologist named Mark Stoneking took a completely different approach. He wasn't looking at tools. He was looking at lice. Specifically, body lice. Head lice are ancient. They've lived on human scalps for millions of years. But body lice, the kind that live in clothing, are a different species, or more precisely, a different ecotype. They evolved from head lice at the exact moment humans started wearing clothes, because clothing gave them a new habitat, a new surface to cling to, a new ecosystem to colonize. Stoneking and his team at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology sequenced the DNA of both louse types and calculated when body lice diverged from head lice. The answer came back at roughly 170,000 years ago. That number is not a coincidence. That is the same window when anatomically modern humans faced their most severe ice age. It means clothing didn't come from creativity or art or culture. It came from survival pressure so extreme that even the parasites living on your body had to evolve a new form to keep up. You've been wearing clothes for 170,000 years, and a louse remembered it when nothing else did. But survival only explains the beginning, because something else was happening alongside warmth, something harder to quantify, something that might explain why you still feel deeply uncomfortable when you're naked in front of strangers, even inside a building at room temperature, with no wind and no cold and no practical need for cover whatsoever. Psychologist Paul Rosen at the University of Pennsylvania has studied disgust and the body for decades. His research keeps returning to a theme. The human body, naked and unadorned, reminds us of our animal nature. And humans, uniquely, are deeply unsettled by that reminder. We are the only species aware of our own mortality. The only species that can contemplate the fact that we are biological creatures that will decay. And the naked body, in certain contexts, forces that awareness to the surface. Clothing, Rosen argues, is partly armor against that awareness, a layer between the self and the raw animal fact of what you are. Other researchers go further. Anthropologist Daniel Miller at University College London spent years studying clothing across cultures and found something consistent. Across wildly different societies, across radically different climates and belief systems, humans everywhere use clothing not just to cover the body, but to construct the self. What you wear communicates who you are, what group you belong to, what you value, what you believe. Before you say a single word, your clothing has already told a story about you. That is not a function of warmth. That is something else entirely. And this takes the origin story somewhere unexpected. Because if clothing was purely practical, you'd expect the first evidence of it to look purely practical. Simple hides, minimal coverage, function only. But that's not what the archaeological record suggests. Around 75,000 to 100,000 years ago, long before clothing was ubiquitous, humans were already making ochre pigments in red and yellow and brown. Already collecting shells with deliberate holes in them. Already making things that seem to have no survival function at all except to signal something, to communicate something, to say, "This is who I am." Some researchers now believe clothing may have emerged not just from the cold, but from the same cognitive revolution that produced symbolic thinking, language, art, the ability to represent the self, the ability to say with a piece of decorated hide or a strand of shells, "I am not just a body, I am a person." That idea sits uncomfortably close to something you feel every morning when you decide what to wear. Not what will keep you warm. What will say what you want to say about yourself today? What will project the version of yourself you want the world to see? Behavioral economist Dan Ariely has documented how clothing changes not just how others perceive you, but how you perceive yourself. Subjects who wore a white lab coat described as a doctor's coat performed significantly better on attention tasks than those told the same coat belonged to a painter. The clothing altered the internal state. You become, in some measurable way, who you dress as. So here is what the full picture looks like. 170,000 years ago, your ancestors were naked and cold and being eaten alive by parasites and the ice. They grabbed hides to survive. The lice adapted. The tradition held. Then something in the human mind began to evolve alongside it. The capacity for self-representation, for identity, for using the surface of the body as a canvas for the inner life, for saying, without words, "This is who I belong to. This is what I believe. This is who I am today." And that cognitive leap, from keeping warm to constructing the self, may be one of the oldest truly human behaviors that still runs every single morning when you open your wardrobe and choose. Tonight, when you take your clothes off, notice the moment your skin meets the air. Notice what it feels like to be, briefly, just a body. No signal, no story, no layer between you and the animal that your ancestors spent 170,000 years learning to dress up. And notice how quickly you reach for something to put back on.